Hello and a very, very warm welcome to this special programme all about the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2014. My name is David Roth from WPP and it's my pleasure and privilege to guide you through the launch of the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2014. So let's first of all start by taking a look at what we're going to cover. In this special WPP Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands 2014 programme, we will be covering how the brands are valued and why the BrandZ methodology makes this the definitive ranking. We reveal a change at the top, a new #1 brand, and count down the entire Top 100. We uncover the fastest brand risers, find out which categories have gone up and which have gone down. An exclusive interview with Sir Martin Sorrell. Observations, analysis and insights from the 2014 ranking results. We hear from a number of special studio guests, including John O'Keefe and Eric Salama. And joining us from Beijing is Tencent, China's leading internet brand. We'll show you how you can get your own copy of the extensive report, including data analysis and thought leadership articles from WPP company brand experts from around the globe, and how to download our new suite of mobile and tablet apps, including a new BrandZ game. That's a lot, but there's a lot more in the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands 2014 launch programme. Well, we've clearly got a lot to cover in the next 50 minutes, and we're going to start with one of the questions that many people ask, and that is, how do you go from the value of a company to the brand value of the company? And in order to help us answer that question, in the studio today we've got Elspeth Chang, who is the Director of Millward Brown Optimore and is the person who is responsible for arriving and calculating the individual brand values of the top 100 most valuable global brands. Elspeth, a very warm welcome to the BrandZ studio. Last time we spoke about the value of the top 100 brands for 2013. You were just about to give birth. I think the next day you were off on your maternity leave. Clearly, you've given birth. What was the result? What was the multiple?
Yep, twins.
Twins, yeah. Boys or girls?
2 girls.
Ah, very nice. Okay, well.
Right.
Excellent. Well, it's very nice to have you back in the studio. It's very nice to have you back at Millward Brown Optimore. Elspeth, can you help us get to grips and answer the question, how do we in the BrandZ methodology go from the value of a company to the value of the brand?
Sure, David. Welcome to the explanation of how we value brands using the BrandZ methodology and why BrandZ is the definitive and most accurate brand valuation tool in existence. The BrandZ brand valuation methodology combines financial data with brand equity research from the WPP proprietary BrandZ database, a quantified brand management tool based on annual consumer survey. To value brands, we use this formula: financial value multiplied by brand contribution equals to brand valued. Financial valued, branded earnings. We first look at corporate earnings. Earnings are very important as they represent profits, and this is what every business strives for. Then we find out the proportion of earnings that's directly driven by a particular brand within the company. We call this branded earnings. Brand multiples, a brand valuation ratio that helps determine the worth of a brand. It is the amount of money an investor is willing to pay for every dollar the brand earns. Brand multiples are forward-looking. What happens in the past, or even what's happening now, is not relevant, but rather the prospect for future earnings. A high brand multiple indicates strong growth prospect of a brand, which also means the investor is willing to pay more for it. yet are similar to the calculation used by financial analysts to determine the market value of stocks and shares. For example, 6 times earnings, meaning that the company is worth 6 times its corporate earnings. We take the branded earnings and multiply it by the brand multiples to arrive at the financial worth of a brand, which we call financial value. Brand contribution. This is the differentiating factor that defines the BrandZ valuation methodology as the definitive brand valuation tool. To get to brand value, we need to peel away a few more layers, such as the rational factors that affect the value of the branded business. For example, price, convenience, availability, and distribution. We have to concentrate on understanding how much of a brand's earnings are entirely due to brand equity. In the BrandZ valuation methodology, we call this unique role played by brand contribution. To get to brand contribution, we use the WPP proprietary BrandZ database, a brand management tool based on annual consumer survey. We calculate brand contribution based on detailed research among the relevant target audience of the brands being evaluated. The BrandZ approach to brand contribution is quantified and sales validated, and this distinguishes the BrandZ brand valuation methodology from other brand rankings. Other brand rankings rely only on subjective opinions or the views of expert panel. Our research now covers over 2 million consumers, more than 50,000 brands in over 30 countries. This unique and diverse knowledge provides a global perspective of the brands we valued. Brand value. Let's look at our formula again. Brand value is a product of financial value and brand contribution. This is the additional shareholder value that's created by brands and otherwise wouldn't exist. Thank you, and back to you, David.
Elspeth, thank you very much indeed for that very comprehensive explanation of how we value brands and the BrandZ unique methodology. And a written explanation of that methodology is also available in the full report of the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands, and that can be downloaded at www.brandz.com. Well, I managed to catch up with Sir Martin Sorrell, the Chief Executive of WPP, and I started by asking Martin what his perspective of the world currently is. Martin, thank you very much.
Pleasure, David, as always.
There have been very many descriptions that have been used to talk about the recession, and you've added to the lexicon yourself in bath shapes and different shapes.
I think it's, just to confuse you completely, I think it's square root shaped.
Okay, right.
Well, sort of a gently sloping up square root. If you get, so you had this 2008, obviously we had the beginnings of the fall. 2009 was the beginning of the square root sign. And then you had a sharp V-shaped recovery in 10, and then it sort of flattened out in 11 and 12 and 13, but kept on. That's where it sort of diverges from the square root. It's not flat, it's a bit of a sloping line up, but it is slow growth.
Could you call the recession over, or are we still in it?
Well, the recession implies, downward GDP growth, and the fact is I think the UK this year will hit where it was in 2008 in terms of GDP. So people are naturally cautious as a result. It's not a recession, it's slow growth out of a very violent shift. It has marked corporate thinking and made clients very cautious, and because growth is sub-trend, they're very focused on cost.
We saw during the recession, after the recession, significant changes in consumer behaviour. Some of that behaviour has sort of gone back to what it was. Some of it has stayed, particularly sort of very valued conscious consumers. In the boardroom, are there now any changes in behaviour that have stuck now post Lehman?
I think consumers probably have changed back a little bit more than corporates have changed back. There is some deal activity, that is a recent change, but I think corporates remain terribly conservative and they're not going to take risks because it doesn't pay them. At the end of the day, I think corporates have become much more cautious, and that will continue to be it. The one other thing that's happened, the fast growth markets that were virtuous 6 or 9 months ago have become vices because they've slowed in terms of their growth. For us, Brazil and India remain strong. Russia and China come under much more pressure, although I was in Beijing last week, and April, certainly we saw, I'm going to use the word explosive, I mean it was explosive growth in China. What we've seen, you know, I wonder whether we should change the name of the fast growth markets to the sort of slower fast growth markets, or the whatever, because the mature markets have become stronger. So the US and the UK have become stronger in the last few months. And then of course you've had currency devaluations. The Rand in Q4 of 2013 was down by 29%. And we had several currencies which devalued in one quarter by over 20%. In the longer term, I'm still absolutely convinced that BRICS and Next 11 are the key.
And where does that put you in your perspective on the forecast for the world economy over the course of the next 12 to 24 months?
I would say 2014 better than 2013. 2015 has no sort of maxi or mini quadrennial events, as we call it, but then we go into 2016. We have a Summer Olympics in Brazil, obviously with some challenges, but I think it will be a great Olympics. We have the presidential election, and then we have the European Football Championships, all of which sort of help things. So I would say I would expect 15 maybe to be roughly the same as 14, maybe a smidgen less, but probably around the same level, but then cranking up for a good 2016.
Martin, we've now been doing the rankings of the top 100 most valuable global brands for 9 years.
Yes.
A lot's changed in that period. YouTube wasn't even around. Twitter, I think, had just about started.
Google was cranking up.
Yeah. There are many more ways of building brands now than there were then. What do you see the change of the way in which companies and brands need to go about brand building?
Well, it's much more difficult now. We at WPP are 35%. So we're ahead of the industry in terms of the proportion of digital that's represented in our revenues. But the answer is it's much more difficult because you have 20% of spending, a third of consumer attention in a much more fragmented form. And those media evaluated by their investors and consumers in a very different way. Traditional media under pressure because they have to shift their model to a digital model, just like we as an agency or a group of agencies had to shift our model from an analog to a digital world. We're currently, on average, as an industry, investing 20% in digital. It should be something like a third.
And how are you reshaping the group in order to take advantage
of
that, both for our clients and
we
also
have four
for
strategic
our
priorities.
investors?
So BRICS and Next 11, instead of being 30 to 35%, we now want to be 40 to 45% of our business. Currently it's 31%. Digital, we want to be 40 to 45%. It's currently 35, 36%. Data and digital, roughly half our business, a little bit more than half our business is about right. And that's the third pillar. And then the fourth prong or pillar is horizontality. It's getting people to work together in more effective ways. And BrandZ are good examples of how Millward Brown and Kantar is working with Group M and each of our media brands and our agencies to highlight changes in the value of brands.
Martin, you were instrumental in setting up the whole BrandZ project. What contribution do you think BrandZ has made to WPP, and what direction do you think?
Well, I think it's focused people on the importance of brands, on obviously brand valuation. It's focused people on understanding that Kantar understands how brands work, that Millward Brown, for example, tests copy and tracks brands, and that we can demonstrate real value. That one of the things that clients are very concerned about is return on investment. That we can, by using these types of techniques, I know I waste half of my advertising, but I don't know which half. And today I think you can say, I know I waste a third or 25% or 10%, but you still don't know which 10 or 15 or a third, 33% is, but you know it's less. Because now we can quantify, and this is where I think BrandZ is really, or BrandZ, is really important. If you think about the work that Kantar does, or TNS does, or Millward Brown, or Kantar World Panel, or Kantar Retail, or Kantar Health, we do provide clients with tremendous insight into the way that consumers are changing. And often I don't think we get enough credit for that, or our abilities are not credited sufficiently. You know, we think we're seen as being much more tactical, whereas we're very much more strategic. And I think, you know, we can take the management consultants on head-to-head on this and demonstrate greater value, because it's much more results orientated, a lot of what we do.
Of course, this is the only one that actually has consumer data as well as the financial data.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
and
brands exist in consumers' minds. So.
Yes, and with there's less subjective element to this. This is, you know, nothing is probably purely objective, but this is very much more objective than the alternatives. And the alternatives will rest on a panel's view about, you know, which are the brands that, or some subjective view about which brands are stronger than others. So this is much more scientific.
Well, Martin, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Very much for joining us.
Hopefully, in every one of the 110 countries that we operate in, we'll have a brand valuation study.
I look forward to that. Martin, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
There are many brands that have touched the lives of millions, but there are very few brands that have impacted the world as much as this one. Even in places like this, the British National Library, even the most bookish of academics, researchers and students are using Google in order to help them with their studies. In fact, the word to Google is the most commonly worded verb in the English language. So much so that in June 2006, it was included in the British Oxford Dictionary. There it's defined as to search. On your computer, at home, or in the office, or even on the move, or just before you go to sleep, we're all Googling something. This search engine is always awake, working in 15 languages across the world, including Japanese, Korean and Chinese. Since its launch in November 2007, Google's Android network has now passed the 1 billion mark, a significant milestone it reached in September 2013. Android is now the most popular operating system. It's bigger than all of the other market leaders combined. Android now has 2/3 of the tablet market as well, with sales in the first quarter of 2014 up a massive 53% from just a year ago. Google products are now household names, from Gmail to the Google Chrome search, to Google News, to Google Play, with digital content store, with apps, games, books, music, and a lot more as well. Turning a search engine from a commodity into a highly profitable business that's revolutionized the world and ingrained itself into the fabric of the lives of its consumers has arguably been a combination of luck and the work of genius. Two of them, the Google guys to be precise, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Whether it's Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Books, the photo organizer Picasa, Google TV, which is built on Android and Chrome, or the futuristic Google driverless cars, the Google drones and robots, Google is at the forefront of pushing the boundaries where technology meets consumers' changing needs in an interconnected and seamless world. It's now a worldwide brand phenomenon. It serves billions, but it's much more than a search engine. It's a data-driven technology giant whose innovations are literally changing the world in all areas, from adjusting the heating devices in our homes to mapping our genes and helping to cure illnesses, and confronting some of the world's environmental concerns too. Wherever you travel in the world today, you'll see scenes like this. Coffee bars with people of all ages Googling away, finding information, helping them decide where to go and even what and where to buy, whilst keeping up to date with everything that's going on in their world and in ours. The knowledge we once only got from books now comes to us from Google. It's even set its sights on indexing searchable excerpts from every book ever published in the world, over 130 million of them, or to be exact, 129,864,880 of them, according to Google's advanced algorithms, including, I hope, 5 of mine. It's already scanned more than 30 million books. A click of the button and your Google search tells you what company and product is offering the best value and who has it in stock right by where you are now. But it's now mobile technology that's emerging as the winner over the desktop. We now search and shop as we walk and talk. Few brands in history have achieved the global recognition that Google has. Sergey and Larry are intent on changing the world as we know it. They see the potential for the internet and their vast data analysing techniques to reach into every sphere of our lives. Google products are now integrated deep into our lives, and those two Google guys are owning more and more of it. They also want to use their drones and balloons to connect those yet unconnected 5 billion potential users around the globe. The markets are huge, and so too are the Google guys. A dangerous high-wire act? Or can they turn their dreams into our realities? It's already happening. Their private pact to work together at Google for 20 years gives them the time to make these advances. Google has acquired over 100 companies. They bought YouTube in 2006. Its biggest was Motorola Mobility for $12.5 billion in August 2011. During the first half of 2013 alone, it spent an estimated $1.3 billion on acquisitions, $966 million going to Waze, an app that helps you outsmart traffic. Its latest acquisition in April 2014 was the drone maker Titan Aerospace. It didn't reveal how much it paid, but those drones will work alongside its Project Loon, which aims to use helium balloons to bring connectivity to remote corners of the world. It also bought recently Nest, a major bet on the Internet of Things, a home thermostat that constantly learns, with many more innovations from the Nest stable due to come soon. Innovation is at the core of its business. Its partnerships are global and all-embracing across industry and academia. People make pilgrimages to Google's HQ in Mountain View, California, just one of more than 70 offices like this one, in over 40 countries. They all share that Google sense of student-like fun with brightly coloured cubes and yurts, and huddles and pool tables, and some even have pianos. Its cafes serve healthy food. It famously employs its own chefs. Mountain View is very much like the university environment that Google's founders, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, met in at Stanford University in 1995, when Sergey, aged 21, was assigned to show Larry, aged 22, around. They didn't initially like one another, but that soon changed. A year later, they collaborated on a search engine called Backrub that worked on the Stanford servers. The next year, they registered google.com as a domain name. The word was a wordplay on Google, a mathematical term for a very large number with 100 zeros. This was a reflection of their ambitious mission to organise all of the world's information. Stanford's powerful network landed them an investor. In just under a year, Andy Bechtolsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems, wrote them a cheque for $100,000 to Google Inc., which was a bit of a problem because the company didn't exist yet. A month later, September 1998, they registered the company and finally paid in the cheque. But before they did that, they went to the Burning Man Festival in Nevada desert and left their first doodle, an iconic man, saying they would be away for a few days. But at the end of the year, they had a workspace in a friend's garage and had hired their very first employee. But the best was yet to come. In December 1998, PC Magazine reported that Google has an uncanny knack for returning extremely relevant results, and it was the search engine of choice in the top 100 websites for 1998. Their business partnership and friendship has lasted the course, as has their shared sense of mission and vision. In March 2001, they appointed Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Novell, as their CEO, and commentators wrote that the Google guys had seemed to bow to the inevitable trio at the top management style. Schmidt had invested $1 million of his own money in the company. Sergey was the gifted dealmaker, Larry the deepest technologist, and Eric got down to the details of running the business. Google's Don't Be Evil motto was first set out in a 2004 IPO letter they wrote to stockholders. It said, "Don't be evil. We strongly believe that in the long term we'll be better served as shareholders and in all other ways by a company that does good things for the world, even if we forego some short-term gains." Like books and the invention of the printing press, Google Search has pushed back the frontiers of knowledge as we know it. And with the accumulation of data that Google now has about each of us as individuals, and the controversies it encounters reflect that achievement. After all, they destroyed the printing press and burned the papers. The impact that technology and the internet is having on our lives is the new chapter in our history books. We're now in uncharted waters, typing the pages of our living history. Today, Sergey and Larry still believe passionately in the endless possibilities of the internet itself. The future is not what it used to be. So it's here in London's King's Cross where Google will be establishing its new London headquarters. This is going to be the epicentre of creativity and technology, with St Martin's College over there and the new Google building taking place over here. And it's probably here where the next iteration of the Google story is likely to unfold for most of us. So the small internet search company that was started in 1998 is in 2014 the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brand. I'm in the headquarters of Google in the UK with Peter Fitzgerald, who is the UK Country Sales Director. Peter, on behalf of WPP and BrandZ, it is my honour and privilege to be able to present this certificate for you to recognise the fact that Google is BrandZ's top 100 most valuable global brand for 2014. Congratulations to you and to everybody at Google.
Thank you so much, David. Wow, this is brilliant. It's lovely just to see it right in front here. And on behalf of Googlers here in the UK and around the world, thank you very much. It's a great honor to receive this.
Peter, I can't let you go without at least asking you one question.
Sure.
How important is the brand to Google as an organization?
Oh, it's essential. It's so important. I think we focus a lot on creating products that you know, we as users will love. So if you're trying to get somewhere on time, you know that Google Maps will reroute based on traffic patterns so you get there on time. Just simple things like that that make your day a little bit better or easier. And you know, by having a brand that's strong, that means our users trust us, and we can keep building great products. So it's absolutely important for us in the work we're doing.
Well, maybe it's time for a little picture that
yes, absolutely.
we can share on various
I've got
different
Google
social
Glass here,
networks.
so I can take I can take a quick picture. Okay, Glass, take a picture. Brilliant. I've got a lovely picture of you holding the award. Okay, Glass, share with David Roth. So this will send it to your email address.
Fantastic, and we can whiz it around the world. Time to go. A celebratory drink.
Fantastic. Thank you again, David.
Pleasure.
It's a great honor.
So now we know who the most valuable brand is for 2014. Let's take a look at every single brand that's included in the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2014. Well, I'm now joined by Nick Cooper, who is the Managing Director for Millwood brand Optimal for Europe. Nick, very warm welcome.
Thank you, David.
We've just seen the full list of top 100 most valuable brands. We've seen everybody's selfie. I don't remember seeing a selfie with you with one of the brands on. Maybe it didn't meet the requirements on the cutting room floor. Anyway, Nick, let's take a look underneath the listings of the top 100 to get some of the detail and understand actually what movements we've seen during 2014 versus previous year's data. Let's start at the high level, I suppose, which is what are we seeing in terms of categories? Which categories up and which categories are down?
Uniquely this year, we see every single category has risen in value. It's the first time we've ever seen that. But some categories are clearly showing some short-term bounce, particularly in areas such as financial services, which have had a difficult time over the last few years. But they've clearly come back. And other categories, such as technology and indeed retail, have continued their onward march.
Underneath all of that, when we start to look at regions, Europe, America, some of the faster growing economies, what do we see in the patterns of brands represented in those regions?
North American brands, which have always been a very large part of the rankings, have actually increased their share, both in number and in value. At the same time, European brands have also done something similar. So whilst we've continued to see growth in fast-growing markets, we've also seen renewed growth in more mature markets.
We've seen a 12% average growth rate of the brands from 2013 to 14, but obviously underneath that it hides a multitude of different things. Some brands are growing at an incredibly fast rate. So let's take a little look at who the main winners in terms of the top risers are for 2014.
Yes, I mean, there are a number of brands that really stand out, and top of the tree is Tencent, which has almost doubled in value, and other technology brands such as Facebook are there as well. But what is interesting about these top risers, and the top risers are growing 40, 50, 60% or more in just a year, which is incredible in terms of brand value. But what we're also seeing is really strong and reinvented brands also making their mark. So, for example, BT, incredibly old brand. In many ways, it's been under-leveraged for many years. And in the last year or two, it's really broken out of its shell, and that is now being reflected in its brand value and creating real excitement with consumers and real excitement with equity analysts and everyone.
Well, you can find a full listing of the top risers in the report, which you can download from www.brandz.com immediately now. Nick, technology is important not just for the pure technology players, but it's driving quite a lot of innovation across all of the sectors. How important is it for brands to embrace technology, either by creating offers, products that have technology built in them, or by using technology-based maybe social networking, communications in order to grow brand value at a faster rate than brands that don't?
We talk about share of life brands, and the technology brands really do that, and we've seen not only well-established brands such as Google doing this, but also new ones coming through such as LinkedIn. And what we're finding is that brands outside the technology sector are really starting to catch on to this and invest quite heavily and actually start to market themselves on the basis that they're incorporating these technology the technology from the big technology brands, and what they've managed to do so far, I think, is to enhance their own brand at the same time as leveraging the technology brand. So what they mustn't do is lose their own identity in that.
It's a double whammy in a sense. Remain true to your own convictions and then use technology to enhance and augment your proposition. That seems to be a winning formula.
Exactly. So, Ford are not pretending they're not a car company. What they are trying to do is say we're an increasingly modern car company. We are contemporary. We're providing the services within our offer that you as the consumer wants. So absolutely, there is precisely that double whammy.
Well, Nick Cooper, for the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, I'm here at the head office of WPP in London with John O'Keefe, who is the worldwide creative director of WPP and one of the world's leading creatives, as well as a fantastic Arsenal fan. John, a very warm welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. We've been hearing about the growth of brands and how strong some of the top 100 most valuable global brands are, both in terms of value and in terms of their relationship with their consumers. But how important do you think creativity is to growing brand value?
Creativity now is probably a brand's last unfair advantage. You know, a small family car, 6 leading manufacturers, they're all going to be around the same price, around the same equipment. You know, what can you do? You can be Honda and become the advertiser of the year and outstrip all your competitors because you've used creativity to drive differentiation. That's the name of the game.
A common theme in the brands that have grown the fastest, or indeed the brands that have remained in the top 100 for all that amount of time, those brands have been continuously innovating and haven't stood still. What advice would you give for an organisation in terms of how they put creativity and innovation in the centre of the organisation?
Sometimes tiny changes make huge differences. Make your online experience as intuitive and easy as possible. You know, a tiny change there can make massive differences. Other times, you really do have to be brave and go for a huge investment, or you've had it. You know, Polaroid cameras springs to mind. Brands like that, you know, once unstoppably famous, brilliant, you know, couldn't make enough of them.
Or Kodak for that matter as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
for that
great
matter,
brands
yeah.
that have completely disappeared.
And they must, you know, looking back, there must have been people in those organisations who saw it coming, but just didn't quite have the wherewithal to say what we need to do is. So, you know, it is instructive, I guess, for all businesses to look at the history lessons, if you like. You know, hire people with a track record.
We've seen many companies create innovation hubs and labs. What's your perspective on those as vehicles to change the fortunes of organisations?
I think it's useful. I think it's good to say these people within our organisation are dedicated to seeing what's next, what else we can do, how can we improve. You know, if people have got that as their dedicated job spec, that can't be a bad thing.
John O'Keefe, Worldwide Creative Director of WPP. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us.
Up the Gunners.
Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Peter Walsh from Millward Brown. Peter is the Global Brand Director for the entire BrandZ project. Peter, a very, very warm welcome. Peter, you've been involved in BrandZ very much from its original thought to its inception to all the work that's been done in between. So it's great to be able to have your perspective on the 2014 data. But I think maybe now's a great opportunity to sort of take a helicopter perspective to understand a little bit about what the data is telling us in terms of trends. And obviously trends are important when we start to look backwards. So maybe, Peter, you can start by taking that sort of perspective over a few years. What do we see and what does it tell us?
Indeed. Recovery and resurgence this year up 12%, as you've just seen. But in fact, if you look back to the beginning of the rankings in 2006, the value of the top 100 brands has nearly doubled in that period. What I've done is done a special bit of analysis for you. If we look back to 2008, just before the recession, and we look at the brand power score, that is the ingredient that creates brand contribution, so what is the element of value that's been driven solely by brand. The average brand's 100. We look across the top 100 2008, we see a very healthy 165.
That's not a bad performance.
Indeed, but if you wheel forward to today, we see that the top 100 is 211. So an increase in branding over that period. And one of the interesting things I can show that it is actually to do with branding is if I look at the brands that I call survivors, those are brands that were in the top 100 in 2008 and are still now. In fact, there are 71 of those.
That's not a bad number, actually, when you think of the cathartic impression and issues that the global recession made for businesses.
Well, it shows the sustainability of a strong brand, that so many of them can survive at the top like that. Well, their scores have gone up since 2008, 188, compared to the ones that have dropped out since that period, which are only at about 155. But what is really interesting is that the newcomers, those are brands that have entered the ranking since that period and are in the ranking now, are a staggering 264.
Well, that's a seriously impressive performance.
Well, indeed. And one of the issues is that they are coming from fast-moving consumer countries. They're also powerful brands that are making themselves meaningful to consumers. They're differentiated, and they're also salient in the sense that they're the answer to what consumer needs are. So it's very much that branding that is behind it.
Clearly, an important ingredient in a brand is its desire from the consumer and its relationship between its desire and value. What do we see in that area, again looking at it in a slightly longer term perspective?
Yes, well, the BrandZ data does measure the desire of every brand and also its price perceptions from the consumer. And if we look at the difference between desire and price, we create a gap, if you like. And the bigger the gap, the better value a brand is. And over time, we've seen desire going up and price in favour of the consumer coming down slightly. We've also seen behind that these successful brands, in spite of consumers being chastened by the recession, that the really clever ones have used technology, which has empowered consumers, to bring their offerings to them in the most valuable and helpful way.
One of the cornerstones of all great brands is their emotional relationship between them and their consumers, and a lot of that is clearly around the whole trust area. What do we see in terms of trust through the lens of this year's data with a historical context?
Trust is a real issue. We measure within BrandZ the historic trust, and we also measure whether you're delivering that trust today. Does somebody recommend your brand? Combine those and we get what we call a Trust R measure, and that equates pretty well to success. And what we've seen over time is that the Trust R across the top 100 brands has slipped a little bit. It was above 104 compared to the average brand, and is now only just above at 102.
And what does that tell us? What's the key takeout?
Well, the key takeout isn't as simple as just all brands. In fact, if you look at the financial brands, and particularly the banks, it really tells us the story. Now, two sorts of banks. You've got the regional banks and you've got the global banks. Now, the regional banks, highly trusted at the beginning of the period. They still are highly trusted, but they've shown quite a big slip over that period. But it's the global banks, which started off round about average, which are now at an all-time low. And in fact, if you took the banks out of the top 100 measure, the top 100 measure is completely stable. So the Trust R slippage is entirely down to the banks. And there's a real lesson here, because I think what it's saying to us is that they need to listen and change. And if they don't, they're really going to suffer and fade.
What about globalization then?
Companies are realizing that instead of imposing global uniformity on those and trying therefore to make them global brands, what they're really much more sensitive to is what is attractive about that brand within its local and regional area, what is driving that, and thinking, how can we actually expand and export this as a new offer in other regions? So that's very, very smart.
So purpose beyond profit, much talked about at the moment. It's a contentious issue to the extent to which corporations should or shouldn't be driven by that. What do you see?
If you've got a brand, it's got to be worth more than a commodity. And the key thing is that the smart ones have realised there's a potential wider agenda for some of them which can be profitable. For example, Red Bull, the lifestyle brand. And they wouldn't expect a short-term return, but it's incredibly exciting and differentiating. And I think Dove within our personal care category is also a very good example with its Real Women campaign. You could argue that's at odds with the personal care category and the beauty business as a whole. Very brave, but it doesn't half differentiate the brand.
Well, salutary lessons. Peter, as ever, thank you very much indeed for a very stimulating conversation and very actionable insights. Thank you very much indeed. Well, there's one brand that's absolutely spot on one of our cross-category trends. It's a brand that operates in one of the fast-growing markets. And the trend that it's working on is the trend of localization. It's a cosmetic brand called O Boticario. And I caught up with its Director of Branding and Communications, Anna Farrell, at the launch of the BrandZ Top 50 Most Valuable Brazilian Brands. Let's hear what they're doing. One of the key trends for 2014 in the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands is the trend towards localization and locality. Can you tell us a little bit about one of the innovations that you're just about to launch in terms of the fragrance and cosmetics markets that really does tap this trend in its essence?
Yeah, what we are about to launch is a set of fragrances in Rio, which were made coming from inputs and stimuli that we received from our consumers, from the Cariocas, the people who live in Rio. And we got pictures, we got videos, phrases, words that they sent to us. We visited these locations and we gathered our fragrance partners to develop 4 different options, tapping into the favorite spots and things that Cariocas like about their city. And it is called Rio Eu Te Amo. Rio, I love you.
And tell us a little bit about how you managed to get people to join in this whole co-curation and curating element of sending things in for you in order to give inspiration for what these fragrances could mean in terms of their sight, their sound and their texture.
So we invited people through the social networks, our own proprietary channels. We also have a lot of stores in Rio. So we had invitations and opportunity for people to drop things off at our stores as well. And we also sponsored the Fashion Rio event. And during that event, we did a lot of work with opinion leaders on this specific project, and out of there we were able to also get visibility of this, and a lot of people came, and at the end of the first phase of it we had over 12 million stimuli coming from all sorts of places in basically 35 to 40 days.
And how did you go from those millions of stimuli to something that was both manageable and then to translate into those most difficult thing, a fragrance, something that in a sense you smell and you experience rather than you can touch and feel?
Yeah. So what we did first was to clusterize a lot of the things that came, because we had pictures and sentences and words, feelings about places, about specific sites, and we were able to set up 4 different territories that became input for a briefing for development of the fragrances. The fragrance houses that work with us each took one of these specific briefings, and they actually went physically to places to collect what we call headspace, which is particles in the air of that specific location, to be combined with other elements based on the attitudes and the vibe and the personality of each one of these sites. We then took 4 different formulations for each one of the 4 fragrances for people to test and to tell us what they liked and why. And for that, we set up activation sites across Rio. They were moving sites for about a month or so. People also could come to our stores to test and select their favorites. And at the end, we were able to have clear winners coming from the Cariocas themselves. We really actually got a lot of people very excited and involved, and to be able to go through this was a privilege. I think it'll be the very first ever co-created fragrance with people, for them, in their city, in their site, ever. So we're very happy.
Great, thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you.
Well, Nick Cooper, thank you very much indeed for joining us again. 12% average growth. We've seen, you've talked about some of the spectacular growths of some of the brands. It's obviously becoming more and more difficult for brands to get into the top 100 because the threshold of value to be, in a sense, the number 100 brand keeps going up and up each year.
Yes, and any brand that's outside the top 100 is chasing a pretty fast-moving target now, particularly this year.
So it's pretty amazing this year. We actually have 7 new brands in the top 100 for the very first time. So do you want to take us through some of those brands and maybe some of the reasons why they've managed to push through where others have found it much more difficult?
Yes, and I think that, yes, the fact that there are 7 newcomers is a bit lower than normal because the whole top 100 has gained so much traction this year, it's grown so fast. But 2 of the brands are from technology, so Twitter and LinkedIn. They are incredibly fast growing, and they're very successful brands, actually making money, growing their user base and so on, and growing their share of life in many ways. So that's their share of life brands.
So don't forget to tweet. It's hashtag BrandZ100.
Exactly. And then beyond that, we have 4 brands from financial services. Now that's a mix of old brands coming back, like UBS, and new brands coming through, like PayPal. Again, really leading a revolution in the way that consumers use money and supporting the way that they purchase things in a technological fashion. And then we have Ford as well. It's probably been mentioned a lot today, but that's because it is an old established brand that really has come back very quickly, and the fact that it's come back into the top 100 is a great credit. But it also shows that the brands, if they continue to invest, if they continue to push the formula for success, whether they're old or new, whether they're from a top performing category or a category perhaps where life is a bit more difficult, they can still move into that top 100. And so these are very exciting brands, all of them, all the new ones.
I think what's interesting is that unlike maybe the football tables, when clubs get promoted to the Premier Division one year, they almost automatically fall out of the Premier Division the year after. We don't really see that with these rankings. You know, once you actually get in, then there's quite a lot of sustainable ways of nurturing that brand and growing that value and still remaining a top 100 brand.
Exactly. I mean, a brand should be, and almost always is, it's a long-term asset that provides not only protection of what you have, but also opportunities for growth. And we see the great majority of brands this year, as we have in previous years, moving on year, and therefore so that they are creating value as they go over time, and that's precisely what a brand should be. In the end, you create a brand to make money. Otherwise, why bother? And this is a measure of how successful companies are doing it. And the thing about brands is they are long-term. And again, that's shown through the history of the rankings.
And it's not only to create money, but it's also, importantly, to grow shareholders' return.
Yes, exactly. And I think that because we are measuring value over time, That is precisely what shareholders want. They don't want a quick buck today. Whilst that's nice, they actually are more concerned with what they're going to get tomorrow and in a year's time, and in 5 years' time, and in 10 years' time. That's what really worries them. And again, brands are assets that should perform, and as we see the really good ones do, they do perform over a 5 and a 10-year period.
Well, one of the values of the BrandZ Top 100 global rankings now is that we've done it for 9 years. Next year will be the 10th anniversary, so maybe we should look and see what's happened over the
have a shareholder party.
You want to have a shareholder party, yes. But it's not just the global rankings that we've been doing. We've been looking at rankings of other countries and other markets. So we have looked at China. For the last 3 to 4 years, we've looked at the top 50 most valuable Chinese brands. This year, we extended that to the top 100 most valuable Chinese brands and other markets as well.
Yeah, so we've been doing Brazil for a number of years, and in the last couple of years, we've extended that to all of Latin America. Again, a lot of interest in fast-growing markets. We have indeed done a ranking a couple of years ago on Turkey as well, which is again within a European context is a very fast-growing market.
And all these rankings and the reports that go around them are available for you to download at www.brandz.com, and they're also included in the iPhone and mobile apps, which you can also download via www.brandz.com/mobile. Well, this year we're going to continue increasing the number of countries that we value in terms of the brands in those countries. What are we going to do this year?
Well, we're very excited that this year we're going to launch an India ranking to go alongside the very successful rankings we see in China and in Latin America. What makes us excited about India is a number of things. Firstly, the way that Indian brands develop is somewhat different from the way particularly many of the Chinese brands have developed. A lot of these brands are actually quite international already, whereas the Chinese brands very often have got a real foothold in the domestic market and then gradually spreading out from there. Indian brands tend to have been sort of perhaps more internationalized more quickly. And they've got perhaps less of a domestic market there, but the second thing is their domestic market has got a fascinatingly unique structure, because Indian brands are a mixture of brands that are and have always been Indian, and those that have actually come from overseas but have effectively been adopted and are essentially Indian brands. And
some of those are over 100 years old.
Absolutely, they're over 100 years old. I mean, much older than many of the brands we see in the top 100 globally. And also we see that the way that Indians approach business, it is fundamentally driven by private enterprise, where we see in China they've decided a slightly different route where the state gets quite involved, and in some ways the ability to compare and contrast those two models or those two emerging superpowers is incredibly exciting. So that will be launched in later this year in mid-August, and will just add a whole new level of our learnings from what we understand from all the BrandZ rankings that we've collected and collated over the years.
Well, Nick, thank you very much indeed. All eyes will be on the Indian rankings in August, and we will keep you posted on the launch date for that. And that report as well will also be available on brandz.com. For the moment, Nick Cooper, thank you and your team very much for creating yet again a fascinating and interesting brand rankings for 2014.
Thank you very much.
Well, by the magic of WPP's worldwide video conference facility, not only a great way of saving money, but also a great way of reducing our impact on the environment, I'm now joined by Eric Salama, who's in London. Eric is the Chairman and Chief Executive of Kantar Group. Eric, a very warm welcome and thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, thank you.
But Eric, John made the point that in terms of differential, creativity now is probably one of the last bastions of taking products that almost have parity and being able to create some differentiation in the minds of the consumer. But how do you see the role for both market and customer insights in driving and growing brand value today?
I think if you look at most of the brands that are really growing brand value are in the top brands that we're measuring through BrandZ, most of them at their heart have got a really big idea that engages with its customers, whether it's business customers or end consumers. Most creative people that I know actually do better when they have a really good strategic brief, when they have a really good creative brief that has got clear insight as to what the brand is trying to do and is narrowly focused.
So as a filter, in a sense, a way of focusing creative's mind, sharp customer insight pays dividends. Well, one of the big cross-category trends, Eric, we've seen this year in the analysis of the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2014 is that data really is the new oil. What specifically are you doing at Kantar to enable clients to take advantage of the huge amounts of data that's now being generated in order to grow their brand value?
I think the single biggest thing is to try and look at all of the insight and the data that we've got from a really holistic point of view. And it's interesting that in a way that the two ends of the spectrum are growing the fastest. The big data and what we do with it, much of which is behavioural data, and the data around one-on-one and the qualitative insights that we get. So at the same time that there's a huge amount of big data, clients and we are really looking to understand why people behave the way they do and using qualitative insight to a much greater extent.
Now, many people have made the huge observation, in a sense, that lots of companies have still huge amounts of small data and not taking great advantage of that. But how do companies take the data that they have within the business and organise it in a way where companies like Kantar and some of the operating companies can extract the key insights that it holds?
Well, some of it is an IT issue, but at the same time there's a very human dimension. If I think about some of the best work that we've carried out for clients, it's just involved bringing the people who know about the brand and the category together in a room for 2 or 3 days and really working through some of the ideas and some of the hypotheses and analysing some of the data. So there isn't a technology part to it, but a lot of it is just getting the right group of people who've got a deep understanding of what's going on and are creative in terms of their thinking and putting them in a room together.
I mean, I think you make an interesting observation, which is, you know, in this data-centric world, just having the data without the people and the skill sets to be able to understand its meaning and its insight is as useless probably as having oil without an oil refinery to be able to use it.
Yeah, I think there are parts of what we do where in a way human beings don't come into it. But that's one particular strand of the big data work that we do. A much bigger part of what we do does involve interpretation of data, and as there's more and more data around, actually having hypotheses as to what's happening in the world is very important. Because if you just look at all of the data without a hypothesis as to what you're looking for, it becomes very hard to find what's important.
Well, Eric, thank you very much indeed for joining us. In another former role, before your Kantar role at WPP, you were the person who instigated the BrandZ project. So thank you very much indeed for doing that and joining us on a historic day in the BrandZ Top 100. Well, we're now joined to Beijing via video conference with Sai Lau. Sai is the president of Tencent Online Media Group and also the senior executive vice president of Tencent. Sai, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Last time we spoke was in London. It's a privilege for us to have you on our programme today.
Yeah, it was quite some time ago. It's good to see you again, David.
So, Sai, a very warm congratulations to you and the entire Tencent team. It's a double congratulations for this year in terms of what Tencent has achieved in the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2014. Number one is that you're the fastest riser of any brand in the Top 100, and for the very first time, Tencent is the world's most valuable Chinese brand, overtaking China Mobile. So many congratulations for this amazing achievement.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I think in this juncture, we would also like to share this moment of pride with our millions of users. It is indeed the users' recognition for our hard work. They have actually given us strong motivation to make us better into the future. Thank you so much.
Sai, we see in the analysis of the brands that continuously outperform others that they put the customer first and at the centre of the organisation. How does Tencent develop its products based on the customer?
Well, David, product development is actually a very big topic within the Tencent company. When we talk about product, developing product, the first thing that comes into our mind, it is actually not about whether such product would create a strong competitive edge. How is it going to be performing versus a competition in the marketplace? But the very first thing that comes into our mind is actually whether would such product deliver a strong impact, or how long would it last? What sort of values would it create for the livelihoods of our users? Finally, in terms of product development, you also need to have a very strong sense of urgency. You almost need to keep staying alert that you might be so-called disrupted or being replaced easily, because in the world of mobile internet today, the users' needs and their likings are very fickle, and they change their minds, in fact, quite regularly.
So Tencent's growth has been nothing short of spectacular. What do you think are the major factors driving the exponential growth of the Tencent brand asset?
The driving forces can be coming from external and internal, for that matters. Externally, I think in China, for the past 1 decade, we are actually blessed with a market economy that have shown a trustworthy progressive growth in areas such as domestic consumption, political stability, and as well as a well-implemented so-called national policies towards embracing digital economy. Now, internally within Tencent, we have also seen a tremendous improvement in few critical success factors, namely the evolvement of our culture, the growth of our talent pool, and also, importantly, the recognitions of our partners. Now, finally, I actually like to take a moment to touch on the point about partnerships. Yeah. Tencent actually partners quite extensively with third-party developers and brands to enrich our offerings to our users. Yeah. So these partnerships actually strengthens our market knowledge, the availability of our talent expertise, and at the same time the ability to innovate and react quickly to any market opportunities that eventually help build up a stronger ecosystem that better serve our users.
Sai, you operate in one of the most dynamic sectors where the only constant is constant change. How does Tencent view the latest competitive landscape of the internet industry, and within that context, what is the direction of Tencent's brand development?
Within the Chinese internet landscape, we still believe that the idea of a mobile internet would continue to play a very, very fundamental role in this industry. This, in fact, will continue to actually open up more new opportunities, business opportunities that lead to the ongoing introductions of new platforms and applications. And in fact, when such things are mushrooming, when such things are happening, you in turn will then see changes on how people are socializing and how people are using technology in their day-to-day life. So in a nutshell, staying ahead of the curve will be a single most important strategic element in our future brand development.
Well, Si, sadly we've run out of time. Thank you very much indeed for being with us and sharing your insights. Congratulations again to you, and I look forward to seeing you in Beijing soon. Si Lau, President of Tencent Online Media Group and Senior Executive Vice President of Tencent, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Well, thank you, David. Come over to Beijing, and we certainly look forward to see you here. Thank you.
We've heard that the average increase in the value of the top 100 brands has increased by some 12%, but some categories have increased significantly faster. Retail as an example. Apparel's increased by 29% and the retail category by 16%. Well, I'm joined by Brian Roberts, who's the Insight Director for Kantar Retail, to get Brian's take and expertise on exactly what we're seeing in the retail category for 2014. Brian, a very warm welcome. From your perspective, why do you think retailers performed so well this year?
Clearly, we're still in a time of economic hardship, if you like. You know, we're not over the hill of the recession yet. And I think a lot of retailers have been doing a very good job of serving as the advocate for the consumer, so really fighting the consumer's corner. Retail is a very dynamic industry, constantly in the spotlight as well. So I think that really does make retail held, you know, retailers are held very highly accountable, not only by their shoppers, but also by the media. You know, we're living in a world where, you know, Whole Foods Market and Aldi are two of the fastest growing retailers around. One's are seeing a huge surge in popularity, and both, you know, are totally opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of affordability. And I think, you know, it's those middle ground players. We see the same thing in clothing as well. But, yeah, taking Tesco for example, obviously they had the big horse meat scandal, which engulfed them in the UK and Ireland, and I think that obviously didn't do them any favours in terms of perception. You know, they're trying to put a lot of things right as well, but at the same time, operationally, they're under huge pressure from some of these more nimble competitors, and are having to work incredibly hard to try and regain some of that momentum.
This year we've seen Uniqlo considerably increase its brand value. What are they doing right?
One of the reasons behind their sort of surging brand value is the fact they're just becoming more international. Some of these global fashion brands are finally living up to that sort of mantle of actually becoming global. So we're seeing lots of interesting moves from some of these big fashion brands like Uniqlo, you know, into Latin America, into North America, you know, into markets like Australia as well. There's still, you know, as much as we talk about global retailers, there are actually very few of them.
Well, first there was multi-channel, then there was omni-channel. Now all the talk is about seamless retailing. What do you think retailers need to do in order to create a seamless experience for their customers as a way of driving their brand value?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different words for it. At the end of the day, it's just retailing.
This year we see for the very first time Amazon has broken into the coveted top 10 global brands in terms of their brand value. What is it that Amazon is doing right?
You know, I think as though they'll be the first themselves to say it's just a relentless focus on delivering shopper satisfaction. And
the relationship now between the two titans of retailing, Amazon and Walmart, is that battle over, or is it got still a long way to go?
Well, I think Walmart has one thing which will be a huge strength for the future that Amazon does not have, and that's stores. And it might sound a bit counterintuitive or old-fashioned to say so, but I think lots of retailers we speak to now who do have a decent online offering married to a decent network of stores are really seeing that as a huge competitive advantage. Shoppers still want human interaction. Despite all of its massive strengths, e-commerce does have that big weakness, and I think over time we're going to see a huge convergence.
Well, Brian Roberts, the Retail Insight Director for Kantar Retail, thank you very much indeed. On a very historic day, a retailer breaks into the top 10 of the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands for 2014. So from me, David Roth at WPP, and from all of our WPP colleagues right around the world, thank you all very much for watching the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands 2014.